Hello, Chipmunk and Chipette fans, and welcome to another Alvin and the Chipmunks Elaboration podcast. My name is Grandy Tamias, and today's topic will be, why did Bagdasarian Productions, the company that makes Alvin and the Chipmunks, sue Universal Studios? So, I think it's pretty common knowledge for those who are familiar with the history of Bagdasarian Productions that they have filed numerous lawsuits over the years against other companies. Some of them have been knockoffs, but others include major film studios, which will be the subject of today's podcast. This also happens to be their first and probably most well-known major lawsuit. Not only is it against the studio that practically created the monster movie genre, but because it also taught Bagdasarian how to be more cautious with the creative and distribution rights of the Alvin and the Chipmunks franchise. For my sources, I will primarily be using an article from Variety, another article from the New York Times, as well as the transcript for the How I Built This podcast with Guy Raz, who interviewed Ross Bagdasarian Jr. and Janice Carmen back in 2017. I'll also be using Monkipedia just to give you all some basics on the smaller details. Let's start from the beginning. Why did Bagdasarian Productions get involved with Universal Studios in the first place? Well, back in the 90s, Universal was trying to get their own mascot, similar to how Disney had Mickey Mouse. Sure, Universal had Woody the Woodpecker for a while, but he didn't really resonate with audiences in the way that the Chipmunks did. And back in the 80s, when the second generation series was running on NBC, Alvin and the Chipmunks not only competed against Mickey Mouse to maintain an audience, but also held their own against Mickey. So in 1996, Bagdasarian Productions sold a 25% share of the company to Universal under the contracted obligation that the studio would promote the Alvin and the Chipmunks characters by adding them into theme parks, merchandise, and new content for both television and film. Side note, the web articles that I mentioned, as well as multiple other sources, say that it was a 35% share, but I'm going with 25% since that's what Ross Jr. mentioned in the How I Built This interview. Even Robert Zemeckis, yep, that Robert Zemeckis, had expressed interest in directing a live-action Alvin and the Chipmunks film around that time, and even though we don't really know anything about the film beyond that, I might do a video on that in the future just to speculate on what could have been. Unfortunately, according to Ross and Janice, just about all the people who they originally talked the Universal deal with left shortly after. The situation got so bad that Bagdasarian's annual profits dwindled from $4 million per year down to $70,000. Not only that, Universal was secretly dismantling its animation division at the time. Because of this, Ross and Janice sued Universal in the year 2000 for $100 million. Quite frankly, I'm surprised they were able to sue for that much, claiming that Universal had, quote-unquote, destroyed an American icon. However, up until now, I neglected to mention that there were chipmunk films produced during this time, those being Meet Frankenstein and Meet the Wolfman, the former of which recently celebrated its 20th anniversary. With Ross and Janice themselves obviously providing the voices of the main characters again, but those were only direct-to-video. The lawsuit wasn't filed until after they had completed Meet the Wolfman, and neither of the films made that much money at first with sales, hence the measly $70,000 profit. And because they contain Universal's trademark monsters, the distribution rights to those two films still remain with that studio to this day. And that's pretty much the end of the story. Sorry I wasn't able to elaborate on the courtroom stuff as much as I wanted. Feel free to let me know in the comments what you think of the lawsuit, or suggest topics for future elaborations. Don't forget that you're also welcome to like and subscribe if you haven't, and if you know any other Chipmunk fans, especially in the fan communities, please consider sharing this podcast with them so that this channel's audience, and thus the channel itself, can grow. With all that said, I hope that you enjoyed this podcast, and thank you for your time in listening to it.